Hi, this is Dan Lexi from Dan Schultz Outdoors, reminding you to keep the adventures alive.
Hey y'all, I'm Johnny.
And I'm Colleen. And we're the Keel Quest. And we want you to keep the adventures alive. Cheers!
Hey, this is Darren from Ride Paddle Repeat, encouraging you to keep the adventures alive.
This is David from Beachley Ironworks saying keep the adventures alive.
Hey, Kevin with an A here. Keep the adventure alive.
Hi, I'm Dan Mayotte. Keep the adventures alive.
Hi, I'm Kevin Callan, the Happy Camper. Remember, keep the adventures alive. Awesome!
Woo, buddy! Shug here! Keep the adventures alive. I am.
Ethan here, the Avid Outdoorsy Guy, reminding you to keep the adventures alive.
We're John and Aaron.
Keep the adventures alive.
Hey everyone, it's Callan from Lure of the North, and I encourage you to keep the adventures alive.
This is Sky North telling you, keep the adventures alive. And now on with the show.
Well, hey, happy Tuesday, everybody. Hope everybody's had a great week. Welcome to another episode of CanoeHound'S Outdoor Adventure Show, a show that brings you a lot closer to the great outdoors. My name is Dennis, also known as Canoe Hound, and if you're new to this show and here to see a great show about the Meanest Link, hopefully you'll see some value in this show. And you know what? We're here every Tuesday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard or Eastern Daylight Time right now. Make sure if you like the show that you do put that on your calendars and maybe hit that subscribe button, and you'll be able to check out all of our future episodes. And if you want to see past episodes, go back and check out our library. We have a lot of great entertainment back there for you. So that's all good stuff. Right now, we have everybody populating the chat over there. I'm going to get into just a few announcements before we get on with tonight's topic and get you all up to date on a lot of things that's going on here with the channel and with a lot of other stuff out there that's going on. Just like to start by saying that tonight's episode is actually sponsored by our good friends over at Algonquin Outfitters. Algonquin Outfitters is celebrating their 60th year in business. And you know what? If you don't know Algonquin Outfitters or you're not familiar with them, check them out. You can check them out on their website at algonquinoutfitters.com. Algonquin Outfitters actually has a lot to do with what tonight's show is all about, and hence the reason why they are sponsoring this show. And you know what? They really stepped up to the plate. Stick around till at least 8 o'clock. Stick around till 9 o'clock at the end, but at least until 8 o'clock when we do our swag giveaway. Algonquin Outfitters has donated a whole pile of swag. You'll see that. Our swag giveaway tonight is worth almost $400. Their prize combined with something from Kevin Callan and myself, basically a great package. One lucky person is going to walk away with that. Stick around for the details. We'll get into that in a little bit. But Algonquin Outfitters, congratulations on 60 great years. I know you guys have a lot more in you, and you've really helped people with quality gear and obviously a lot of knowledge as to you've shared a lot of knowledge out there with all these canoe routes and stuff like that. So thanks. Keep up the great work. Great to have you on board. Last week we had we featured two up and coming YouTube channels. Yeah, basically it was a show on couples and relationships in the backcountry. It was a really fun show. It was really neat because the two couples that we had on the show, Ashley and Keenan and Tunis and Brittany, they all kind of really hit it off. I could see a collaboration maybe in their future. They're very like-minded. Heck, they almost dressed the same on this show. And I don't think that was planned, but it did happen. It did happen. So thanks to them guys for the show last week. If you missed the show, you can go back, check out our season 2 library, and you'll see it in there. It was a really good show. It's well worth a watch. And from last week's show, I just want to congratulate the winner of the swag giveaway, who was Ben from the YouTube channel Conjuring Rock. So very good. Your prize is in the mail. The other parties have been notified, and I'm sure your stuff will be in the mail very soon. Bit of a sad note on my end here. Season 2 of Canoe Hounds Outdoor Adventure Show is actually winding down here in June. We will be back for a season 3 next year, but the end of June will mark my summer off, so I can get out there and do a little bit of playing in the wilderness myself. Summers are busy for me, so that's why we don't have shows. But there's always the library if you need to catch up on some past episodes. But next week, we still do have some great shows coming up here in the month. Next week, June 15th, mark it on the calendar because we have Karina Alexis from the YouTube channel Alexis Outdoors. Her and her significant other, Brandon, from the YouTube Timber Mates, will be on the show, and we'll be talking about both their channels and how they're melding them all together and getting a bit caught up on what's going on with Karina and Brandon these days, and should be a very good episode. So make sure you tune in. If you take a look up above the chat, you'll see that there's a pinned message up there. It's something new that I just started. It's not something I like to ask for, and I rarely do it, but I put up there, somebody suggested that I put one of these buy me a coffee or buy me a beer links on there, which I did. And you know what? I had my first person buy me a beer for the show, and I just want to send a little cheers out here to Sean, and I believe his channel name is The Romantic Paddler. Sean, cheers to you. This beer is for you, or toasting with you. This is all awesome. So everybody else, if you got them, crack them. Enjoy one while we're having the show tonight. Usually the first thing I sip on a show is actually a coffee, which is coming up too. So I got all kinds of stuff to drink tonight. Some really cool news coming down the pipe that a lot of you may be interested in. Episode 14 was a show on backcountry cooking. We had Kevin Ride from Kevin Outdoors, and we had Michaela Ferguson on the show. And we talked about all kinds of meal preparations and dehydrating foods and food preparation, storage, and the whole gamut there. And Kevin from Kevin Outdoors had mentioned that he was working on a cookbook. Well, it came down the pipe that I guess the book is into production. Will be fully printed and ready for distribution in a short time. But in the meantime, you can check out the book at Backcountry Eats. That's backcountry-eats.com. Check that out because you can actually pre-purchase yours to make sure you get a first edition of it. And I'll tell you, from what I've seen from the book, and I've got a couple of screenshots I can actually put up here on screen. I'm getting a little behind myself here. There's the website cover of the book. It's got all kinds of great things in there. Selecting a dehydrator, dehydrating camping meals, meal planning versus ration planning, portioning and packaging, stoves and fuel, baking in the backcountry, protecting your food from wildlife. Kevin has covered it all. If you've ever watched any of his videos, you'll see some of the great things that he's cooked. Look at some of these great shots of great meals that he's actually prepared in the backcountry. You too can do that. All you need to do is pick up a copy of Backcountry Eats, and we will have more details on that next week. I'm pretty sure Kevin is in the chat over there. Kevin, if you want to post the link to your channel, or sorry, your website, by all means, please do. You have permission. membership shout-outs. Every week I shout out our Solo Tripper channel members. Just want to say thank you to Sty North, Kevin with an A, Jeremy Walla, Smokin' Our Barbecue, Pam Bookham, and Michaela Ferguson, and to all my other channel members as well. Thank you very much for your support. Your support actually helps the wheels keep turning with this station or with this channel and these live streams. It helps just offset costs for, streaming software and mailing and production of swag and things like that. So, and the occasional beer. I'll admit that too. So thanks very much. If anybody's interested in being a channel member, right down around here in YouTube, you'll see a join button. Feel free to click that and find out what it's all about. No pressure. And then, of course, I also have show sponsors or business sponsors or affiliates. Number one is Algonquin Outfitters tonight. Like I said, celebrating their 60th anniversary. You see the little button up here in the corner. Congratulations to them. Our good friends over at Kid Products, makers of the Kid Twig Stove and Reflector Oven, Backcountry Coffee Company, Great Signs and Graphics, Short Hills Beard Company, and Ursac USA. So you can find all their links in the description below. And I promise just two more things here before we actually get on with tonight's show. If you have any hot topics or guests that you'd like to see on the show, drop me an email at canoehound@gmail.com. Just get that on screen for you. And I'll do my darndest to make it happen. But obviously, it's not going to happen this season. It'll help me plan for season 3 because we will be back in September. And this will help make my job a little easier trying to find guests that you're interested in seeing or topics that you'd like to hear about. So that's a good thing. Please do send that across. And also, if you have any questions for myself or tonight's panelists, by all means, put a question in, or put the word question in capital letters over in the chat and your question to follow, and I will do my darndest to get it up on screen. So with all that being said, that's a mouthful. Let's get on to tonight's topic, the real reason why everybody is here. Tonight, we'll be talking about a very challenging and popular Algonquin Park canoe route named the Meanest Link. We're going to be joined by a few guests who have experienced this route and all that, and they all have a lot to share, believe me. First, we're joined by a longtime manager of the Algonquin Outfitters Oxtongue Lake location and co-founder of the Meanest Link Canoe Route. Please welcome to the live stream, Gord Baker. How you doing, Gord?
I'm well.
Can you hear me?
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, Gord is very rural out there, so if he looks a little broken up there, bear with him because in the green room he was breaking up, but I heard him perfectly fine, so we should be all good there. Next, we have a popular YouTube couple who are both triathletes who compete in Ironman competitions and who are the current record holders for completing the Meanest Link in the quickest time unassisted. Please welcome to the live stream, Chris and Julia Prouse. How you doing, ladies?
Hey, great. How are you?
Good. Look at you two, all fit and ready to go, eh? Kind of nice, eh? They're gonna let the reins off us a little bit, hopefully this week, right? We can get out there and do some paddling. Lastly, our next guest doesn't need any introduction on this show. He's devoted his life to canoeing and sharing his experiences for the love of the great outdoors with everyone. He's the author of 17 books, multiple publications, made numerous TV appearances, and they're always after him for his expertise and knowledge of the outdoors and what's going on here in Ontario and Canada, right? His most recent publication is a book called The Meanest Link, which is about, guess what? Or no, sorry, it's Once Around Algonquin. It's about the Meanest Link. Okay, so we'll be talking to him about that. Please welcome to the live stream,
Hi,
Mr.
I'm Kevin Callan, the Happy Camper.
Woo! Yes, I'm Apostle number 14. Well, if you visited me instead, you would have been fine. It's a one sexy beast, I'm telling you. I called you poopy pants. Sorry about that.
Did you really?
I will hold in my urine for you, Dennis.
You have to remind Kevin that this is a family show.
What about the chipmunks?
Awesome.
Kevin, how you doing, buddy?
I can't hear you. I got the fan going. I have no air conditioning here. Are we on the show yet?
Kevin, you're already breaking out into sweats more than I am.
Oh, it's terrible. Seriously, it's terrible. Look, I'm a rock star. Wait for it. The fans, hold on.
Awesome. So how's everybody doing tonight? Everybody getting a little bit excited that the canoe season is going to start opening up for us?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Good stuff. You know what? Kevin's having trouble with his his fan already. So Gord, I'm going to start with you. I want to find out, you being one of the co-founders of the Meanest Link, what can you tell us? Why did you actually create this this very rugged, tough canoe route?
Well, it kind of goes back to around 2003 or so. And a fellow named Alex Hurley and Alex, I'll just kind of introduce Alex a little bit because he's very central to this story. His parents, Jack and Peggy Hurley, were longtime staff and at one time part owners of Algonquin Outfitters, and also had a deep connection with Camp Pathfinder and Bill Swift Sr., also known as Meanest. And so Alex is their oldest son, and he was quite literally born, or perhaps even conceived, at the Oxton Lake location. So he and Algonquin Outfitters have a big connection. So he was working at the time, and being at that time, he was kind of my right-hand guy and helping me with guided trips and so on. And we were lamenting the fact that our staff at that time were just not going on canoe trips as much. You know, they were playing golf or doing this. And so we thought we would try to come up with a way to encourage people, motivate people to go on trips and challenging trips. So I can't remember if it was him or I right now said, well, let's see if we can invent a way to connect different Algonquin Outfitters stores. And at that time, there were less stores in the Algonquin Outfitters family, but we determined that we could connect the four principal canoe tripping stores, so Oxton Lake, Huntsville, Brent, and Opiongo, by a canoeable route. We had some challenges conceiving the route from Huntsville to Brent, but then that opened up the Big East River, which was fairly unknown to a lot of people at that time. And it also, as we kind of got into the discussion, you know, we knew we wanted to honor Swifty, who had passed away a couple years before, and we wanted to celebrate traditions of canoe tripping and certain parts of Algonquin Park that were important to Swifty, like the Nipissing River, Lake Lavier, Brent, and kind of went from there.
So how long did it actually take you to derive this? Because like you say, you actually got a lot of logistics that you have to work on there, because the entire route is not actually in Algonquin, right?
Yeah, we kind of talked about it over the course of that summer. And then in the fall of 2003, you know, kind of came up with some the basic rules, which are not really much changed today. And some of which are, you know, safety oriented, some of which are tradition oriented, some of which are just silly. And, you know, kind of created this. And honestly, originally we thought this was going to be a thing that, you know, nobody would be interested in except Algonquin Outfitters staff. And in the beginning, for the first couple of years, that was the case. And then the kind of word got out there, and then still, even at that time, the internet was nothing like it is today. There was no YouTube. I can't even remember. I don't even think Facebook existed at that time. So, you know, there was email and sort of basic web pages, and we put it out there. And then Camp Pathfinder connection kind of evolved, and then some good customers, you know, kind of got wind of it, and they started getting into it, and other people got into it, and Camp Pathfinder group started doing it, and then just regular folks like Chris and Kevin and Julia started doing it, and now it's a bit of a thing. So there you go.
It does get a lot of attention nowadays. You know, you ask any canoeist if about it, and a lot of them say they want to do it or they'd like to attempt it, or they have heard of it at least. So that's a cool thing. Silly question, have you done it yourself?
No.
Why? Really?
Well, I've done parts of it in different trips and routes. So, but actually, it's just never worked out for me to do the whole route at one time. Maybe Kevin and I will do that someday when he wants to go for the second time.
I'd like to attempt it myself. So let's grab the canoes. Let's go. And I'm not. I could do it in a couple. I don't have to be like them ladies down there and knock it off in record time. So it's which is awesome. We'll get into that in a moment. So, what was your relationship like with Swifty? Did you? Were you good friends?
When I started working at Algonquin Outfitters way back in the early 90s, there were only, essentially 3 locations. So Oxtongue, Opiongo, and Brent. And then in a couple of years, the Huntsville store came along, and it kind of grew from there. And Swifty was, obviously very active in the business at that time. And for those of you who met him, he was a tremendous character and passionately in love with Algonquin Park through his own connection with Camp Pathfinder. And he was an early member, one of the founding members of the Algonquin Wildlands League. He was involved with the Friends of Algonquin. He was awarded the Director's Award from the Friends of Algonquin. So he had a very deep connection with the park, as well as being a very experienced canoe tripper in his own way. And through his time at Pathfinder, and even as an older person, as canoes get lighter, us old folks, can still lift them up. So he was able to keep on canoeing into his 70s before he died. So good for him.
Yeah, for sure. So with that being said, if a person wants to get into planning this, where should they start? I know there's all kinds of resources online and books and such, but what would you suggest a person do if they're interested in partaking in this whole route? That's for you, Gord. Can you hear me, Gord? Okay, Kevin.
No, you seem to have said, Chris, she left. She's like, that's it. I've got nothing to do with. Oh, for the love of.
Okay, let's embarrass Kevin even more, right?
We both read the book.
Start with this. Yeah. This is a great way to get into it.
That's that's not how I started. No.
Not how you started.
I think Gord is experiencing a little bit of technical difficulties. Yeah, so I'll ask Chris and Julia then. How did you guys begin your planning for this trip? What resources were you looking at to plan this whole thing?
I began by sticking my head in the sand. I was very intimidated about the route before we started, and my coping strategy was just like, la 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 la. Chris, you do the planning, you figure it out. Don't tell me how many kilometers of portaging we need to do every day. Just so she can answer this question.
So I would say we actually started with Northern Scavengers. Fantastic series on YouTube. Alex and Noah put together a fantastic series on YouTube about the trip. And I didn't even know about the route until I watched their fantastic series about it. So my hat's off to them for introducing it to us and for producing a great series about the Meanest Link on YouTube. I would highly recommend it. And from there, we just started digging up every single resource we could possibly find on it, which also included Kevin's book. Fantastic book, highly recommend it. I'm going to read it again really soon just because I really enjoy it. And also Gord's resources online. So Gord runs a fantastic Facebook group for the Meanest Link. And it's just chock full of all sorts of fantastic information. Gord has compiled a lot of fantastic information on it. And if you happen to pick Gord's brain about the route, be kind to Gord. I'm sure Gord gets inundated with just a ton of requests and questions about the Meanest Link. So if you bug Gord about the route, be sure to buy him a drink.
You wouldn't like that, would you, Gord?
Oh no, not at all. I'm
not at all.
I'm almost out of wine right now. So.
Oh, yeah. So my question was actually, Gord, is what type of resources should people be looking into if they're planning a trip? And I think Chris did a pretty good job of answering it, but maybe you might be able to add a little more because you are the moderator for the Meanest Link Facebook page as well, or Facebook group.
Yeah, I'm the admin of that page and sort of active. Sorry, dog interruption. The page, I mean, there's a lot of chatter on the page, which is great, and people are very polite and helpful. It's one of those nice groups on Facebook, and you know, that's a nice thing. And as well, there are some resources. There's lots of photos. There's a section called Files, which is a bit tricky to find, but it's one of those little buttons off to the right. You click down, you'll see files. There's trip reports there. There's the list of who's done it since 2004 and what sections they did, if you want a reference. There's just elevation charts. There's all kinds of weird stuff. And if you're really bored, I mean, just scrolling back through all the chatter over the years, you can learn a lot. There's so much good chit chat and tips, things that kind of get lost because, as you know, Facebook kind of moves along. But if you have the time, it's worth going back through all that chat. And then people can feel free to send me an email or contact me at AO. Happy to answer questions. And, you know, there's other staff. We still have Jamie Capel, for example, one of the 4 women who were the first group to do the full route. She still works at Oxtown Lake, where she continues. So she's a good resource, and not sure how much she remembers. I think she's tried to block it from her memory, but
and
things were different back then.
Jamie's group had it a lot worse than any of us. They had to go up McCraney Creek without the portage that we all get to enjoy today. Yeah,
that's a really interesting story. If we can get to it at some point tonight, it's just a little subplot about how those portages came to be and how a canoe route, you know, people just doing this canoe route made that happen.
Why don't you talk about it now?
Okay.
See, what I'd like to try and get not out of the way, but what I'd like to accomplish tonight is starting with sort of the history of the route itself, right? How it got its beginnings. Obviously, you've covered that, and then getting into, you know, the transgression of it to where it is now today. And if portage, Kevin, you might want to go get yourself an ice pack.
I got to turn the fan on. Sorry. Tell me if you don't hear me.
We'll wave at you. But yeah, so what the story about how the portages or how some of the portages come to be? How does that come about?
Okay, so if people are familiar with the route, I mean, the route from Huntsville to Brent follows the Big East River for a large part, and that people tend to start and go in a clockwise direction.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to, but most people do because that's kind of traditional. It helps you get the hardest part of the trip over early. And so you're going upstream on the Big East, which is a rugged, not well-traveled, it's in a non-operating park. There aren't developed portages. It's rough terrain, and there are, you know, there's some houses and hunt camps along the river, but it's pretty remote. And so when you get to close to the headwaters of the Big East, the Big East kind of veers off and goes into some small lakes going over towards Canoe Lake. That's where the real headwaters of the Big East are. but then to continue the route of the Meanest Link, the original route, and the only way that sort of made sense to us at the time was to go up what's called McCraney Creek that goes into McCraney Lake, which is a accessible canoe tripping lake out of the Rain Lake access point. And so that just, okay, that's the way people should go. And we didn't know, like, we hadn't been there. We just thought, okay, that's the way they'll go. And, like when a couple of guys actually attempted the route before Jamie and her friends went, and they had a horrifying time in McCraney Creek, came back to tell us about it. And then Jamie and Leah and Sarah and Janet went, and they had a really tough time because it gains quite a lot of elevation. I think it's about 300 feet over, I don't know how many kilometers, but not far. It's a big elevation gain in a relatively short distance, and it's choked with alders, and it's not really canoeable. So it's kind of hellish. So long story short, that was sort of the way people went. And then I had the good fortune to go on a helicopter flight on a night, what was called an ice out flight. And with my co-worker, Jerry Schmanda, longtime manager at the Opeongo store, and another Algonquin Park legend for a lot of us anyways, Don Stanfield, the photographer and just interesting cat, and also the very legendary Craig McDonald, who I know Kevin knows, but if you don't know Craig worked for the Lands and Forests, MNRF for 47 years, and they kind of made him retire. And his main job, he worked in Temagami, he developed canoe routes in Temagami, he developed the whole canoe route system at the Frost Center when he was there, and in the last part of his career, he was in Algonquin Park, and his main job was trail development. So the ski trails, portage trails, all that stuff. And Craig is just a fascinating individual and full of lore, and collects indigenous snowshoes and speaks Cree. He's just an amazing man. You want to download his brain. So we're up in the helicopter with Craig, and we kind of did this big loop around the park, and we're coming back down the western boundary and flew down the valley of McCraney Creek and the Big East. And I was like, this is mind-blowing, because the terrain in there's big hills, like 500-600 feet vertical, almost like a canyon. And Craig's pointing out, well, there's the ancient portage to such and such, and you can see the line of trees that shows where the toll road was, and all this stuff. And you're hearing this through the headphones in the helicopter. And he started talking about historic portages between McCraney Lake, Hood Lake, and the Big East River. And that's kind of, the light went off. And we started, I asked him a few questions about that. And then that thought kind of percolated for a few years. And I happened to be talking with, Jeffrey McMurtry, who I'm sure you all know, who was planning his route with Mark Rubino and the Scarlett Brothers and a couple other fellows. And they just latched on to this portage idea. And of course, Jeffrey, being the map maker, and the Scarlett Brothers, who were kind of into that as a hobby, they've mapped it out, figured out where it should be, and they decided to go that way. And I'd actually told Jamie and her friends about this, and they attempted to find it, but couldn't find anything. But Jeffrey and the guys found traces of the original portages and kind of mapped their own. And then Craig heard about this, and he thought, well, there's enough interest in this canoe route. People are obviously doing it. And he told me later that if I can show park managers that a route and historic portage is being used again, then I can go and open it up. So that's what he did. he got a crew together. They went in, they opened the trail up, they put up signs. And so now the Big East to Hood Lake to McCraney over what is now known as Buzzkill Mountain. That's kind of the standard area here. Yeah, well, I'm pointing at your map right there. Buzzkill Mountain is what basically gets you into Algonquin Park.
Okay.
If I had to describe it, Buzzkill Mountain is like walking up something between a blue square and a black diamond on a ski hill. It's you finish the Big East, which is like a challenge of its own that you've just like relentlessly fought against going up against the current for a day or days sometimes, and then you get to that portage and you're just so elated. And then Buzzkill Mountain is ahead of you, and it is like walking up a steep ski hill, and it definitely deserves its name.
That's the name.
So obviously, you and Julia were very thankful that portage was blazed when you attempted or conquered.
Yeah, we were thankful that it was blazed, but the sheer like up of it is just it. Like its namesake, it's like you're excited to be portaging, but 2 minutes later you're like, oh my gosh, this is a crazy portage.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So with all that being said, Gord, now when you developed, you and Alex sort of laid out this route, you had no intentions of it being something that, or thinking that people would be attempting speed records and stuff like that, obviously, right?
No, like I said, we just thought it would be, some Algonquin Outfitters staff, maybe some Camp Pathfinder people, sort of park people kind of thing. But yeah, we never had any idea that it would have a book written about it or videos made about it. Nothing like that. It was very simple and humble intentions.
And therefore, Chris and Julia, what prompted you to attempt this route at such a breakneck speed?
Well, and we should clarify that like anybody who's going to take on the link should do it at a rate that's comfortable for them, and the link really isn't a race, and I don't think we didn't really consider ourselves as racers out there. We wanted to go out and set a respectable time, but I don't know. It didn't feel like we were racing. But yeah, I think we really wanted to set a respectable time.
Right. And is that just the competitive nature in the two of you being, triathletes and all?
Yeah. Well, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think we both love a good challenge, and Chris has this saying, you never feel more alive than when you're on the ragged edge of what's possible. And which is very cute. And I think it's true. Like you do feel alive when you're out and just having an adventure. And I think also part of us were like a little bit spurred on, as to women in the outdoor space. We kind of, I don't know, we've often gone on trips and focused on the filming aspect and gone on family trips and focused on that aspect. And I think we also kind of just wanted to prove that like, yeah, we're also tough. We can also go out and hold our own and again, hopefully inspire other women out there to not be afraid to go out and have an adventure.
Mm-hmm. So what was your time? You actually conquered, or I keep using the word conquered. I'm sorry, but you actually did this trip in how many days?
We did it in. So technically speaking, if you're going by the clock, we did it in 6 days, 11 hours, and 34 minutes. But as Gord will tell you, they round it up, or Gord rounds it up. So Gord counts it as 7 days. So, yeah.
Okay.
I think I gave you 6.5.
Oh, really?
Oh,
okay.
very nice. Thank you.
Yeah. So Gord, with that being said, you obviously keep track of people that are doing this. Do they have to register as doing the Meanest Link, or what if somebody just undertakes it themselves? There's rules that are laid down for the route, right?
Yeah, I mean it's a canoe route, so there's nothing stopping somebody from just going and doing it and not telling anybody about it. That seems to be rare nowadays. The not telling anybody about something. But yeah, sort of, if you want to be recognized on the spreadsheet, let's call it, you know, or you want to sort of be official, then the rule is, yeah, you need to kind of tell us you're doing it. You need to prove in some way that you've actually completed the route. Originally, before we had spots and in reaches, we asked people to take photographs of portage signs along the way. And that's still a thing for some people. And now with tracking devices, you know, people who choose to share their track, we can obviously see where they are. So that's okay. And then there's, you know, and that's enough. And then you get put on the list of people who've done it, whether you do one section or all four. And, you know, we kind of keep track of those things. And what else? You know, and then whether people make a video or write a trip report, I certainly encourage people to do that. And I will, you know, share it on the Meanest Link group or other places. But there's no, you don't have to. So it's just, you know,
so like there's rules, but they're pretty relaxed, right? Type of thing.
They're pretty relaxed rules, yeah. And it's more, for me, it's just, you know, it's for people having the experience, that special canoe tripping experience. I think one thing I'd want to say before I forget, is I think my sense is for a lot of people, the Meanest Link route is becoming like a first step to doing expedition canoe trip. Like a lot of the people who have been doing the route in recent years are people with considerable Algonquin Park experience, you know, solid canoe tripping skills, but they've never done a 12-day or a 14-day trip. And planning this trip kind of takes them to another level. That, okay, I'm going somewhere, I'm going out of the park, I'm going to somewhere that's not well mapped, like the Big East River. I'm going to parts of the park that aren't well traveled. So it really forces them to think and plan a little more and work out logistics that they might not ever think about, like shuttles or backup people to pick you up if you get hurt, things like that. I think Kevin could probably speak to that sort of planning aspect, maybe, because he, you know, I don't know.
What do you think, Kevin?
You're a famous canoe trip planner, Kevin.
Well, no, I did a whole bunch of trips far better than the Meanest Link, and once I did the Meanest Link, I'm done.
It's tough.
I'm just joking, Gordon. I'm just joking. Sorry. Actually, you got a really good point with that. I was the complete opposite. I think you're 99% of the people that actually do it is like sort of spawn them on to do something different and beyond that. I especially last year during COVID, I think that because they can't or they couldn't do a marathon run, they did a marathon paddle. I think that's why it was so popular last year. Yeah. When I did it with Andy, it was not. It was sort of a good storyline that would be funny because we turned 50 at the time. That had nothing to do with breaking the barriers or whatever. In fact, Andy still doesn't want to talk about it, like because he didn't know what we're doing. I just picked him up on his porch and he goes, "Hey, what's up?" And then even to this day, like I got 10 years that he's designing every canoe trip him and I do together. And he's designing it right now. We're supposed to be out now, but we can't because of COVID. But we set out for August, and I don't know where we're going.
So you dropped him into the Meanest Link without him even knowing about it.
Well, but that's what we did. I mean, I organized so many trips, right? Because I was running guidebooks and stuff, and he's a really good friend of mine, and basically he would take his time off work and go with me, but he didn't know where he was going, and he didn't care because I was writing guidebooks. He goes, yeah, we're doing Quetico for 28 days. What I would just tell him how many days we're going. It was okay, whatever. Okay, how many days, Kevin? Right, and I pick him up on the porch, and off we go. So when I did the whole Meanest Link thing, it had a lot to do with. Well, I was turning 50. My life was kind of weird at the time, and I remember Gord years before talking about the Meanest Link idea. You and I were at the shop together, and you were talking about this idea of going to all the access points. And I thought that'd be really cool. It didn't have a name at the time, but then I remember coming back from some outdoor show, Canoecopia, and think about those times. It's early February. We could do anything in early February because you're looking at a map. You're like, I could do that. Yeah, I could do that. Because you don't know about the bugs and the portages, and you're out of shape. You don't think about that. Oh, I could do that. And I was stuck at the airport because of something going on, and I pulled my map out of Algonquin Map, and I was looking. Oh, I have a dream. I have a dream. And by the time I got back to my home, I contacted Andy. I said, hey, let's do this Meanest Link thing. He goes, well, yeah, okay. Well, what is that? Because he really doesn't have a clue whatever. Like, he doesn't have a Facebook page. He doesn't know what Twitter is. He's lucky if he answers an email, let alone a phone call. Okay. So I just said, look, it's going to be 3 weeks. We're turning 50. We should do something really kind of cool. And I'm looking for a good story for CBC Radio. And I literally the night before he came to my house, and he said, what do you mean we're doing portages once? I remember that. I remember he came over and he goes, whoa, Kevin, we've never done portages just once across. We're there for a good time. I went, yeah, we can't do that because it's 68 kilometers of portaging. It was like, what? 102 portages. He goes, what? And I went, no, seriously. And you can't bring anything really fancy. Like, you can't bring a camp chair. I remember saying that. You can't bring a camp chair. And he goes, why are we doing this, Kevin? Like, what is your issue? I was like, well, we're going tomorrow. And I showed up, and he was late. He slept in. We got to Gord's there, and Gord did the whole show thing to Huntsville, and we got to the Big East River the first night, and then the second night. And it was the second night when he goes, let me have a look at that map. Where are we going? Can you imagine? Like,
poor Andy.
Like really, like Chris, can you imagine? Like all the people.
You say you're a good friend of his.
Yeah, well, he's still a good friend, but he had a limp for 2 years. He had knee surgery afterwards. I don't really think his wife really talks to me for that reason. She's quite quiet around me for every time I visit, and I think that's why. I did not know he had knee surgery because of it, but I do know that he didn't have enough time to finish it, so he was going to leave me at Obiango. And by the time we got to Brant, he said, no, I'm finishing this. And Gord knows the story more than everybody, but I cheated a lot on that trip, and I could care less if I cheated. It was just a trip. In fact, Gord, I never really got a badge for it, right? I mean, do you get a badge?
There are no badges.
There's no badges? Okay. Do you get your name on a wall?
Your name is on the spreadsheet, Kevin.
Well, spreadsheet because
with like a little asterisk beside it, right?
Yeah, it's like, you really didn't.
He's got a lot of those.
Oh, but I think really like your trip was different than mine, and I admire that you did it for focus because you want to do it as fast as possible and as fun as possible and film it. Andy and I did it because we're turning 50 and we thought it'd be really funny. And then, and the story goes that when that person stole my whiskey, it switched Andy's mind. So we got to Brant and, all right, well, Gord, you tell the story. Like basically there's rules, but there's not rules. And it's very true. A lot of people think it's traditional to not do food drops, to do it in a cedar canvas canoe, to do it as fast as possible. Those aren't rules. You're not saying those are rules, but a lot of people, well, I shouldn't say a lot of people, actually, like hardcore people think that that's how you should do it. Yeah, whatever. I didn't do that, right? So I was on CBC radio talking about that, and by the time I got to Brent, I went to Jake. He had my food drop, and I went to open the food drop box, and all my food was there, but there's no whiskey for the next trip, which was actually brutal. Going up the Crow River, holy crap. Talk about the East River, going out the Big East River. That was bad because we didn't have those portages, by the way. We went up friggin' whatever hill you call it in the bush. But Big Crow, Andy said, this is just the stupidest thing we've ever done, Kevin. And he even said, he goes, this is not around Algonquin. He goes, if I went around Algonquin, I would avoid all these portages.
The
Big Crow is
the Crow River portage system was my least favorite of the entire trip. Yeah.
I think we just didn't know what to expect going into that part, because we had this beautiful time going down the Petawawa, where you're going with the river, you're doing these little portages that are relatively easy, and then going up the Crow, we're like, okay, so we've got like a few big portages, but then just like some little ones, just like a little like doop 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 doop, and then we're into Leviel. So it's like it starts with a 2-kilometer uphill portage, and I hadn't looked at the map ahead of time, so I'm like, I'm just gonna power through and get to the end of this because I'm not in a good headspace. I'm just gonna get to the end of this, and you put the boat down at the end of the 2 kilometers, and you look up, and there's like a meter of water, and then another 1 kilometer of portaging. And you're like, no. And so we get to the end of that, and you're like, there, done. We're finished with the long portages for the day. We just have these little bitty ones. It's not a big deal. So you start paddling, and you realize, okay, the current is very strong here. So you're just like, the paddling is no break. You're just like ripping into the water, trying to like beat the current. You get to the first portage that's like 100 meters, and you realize, no, like this is 50 meters of slippery, tumbly rocks. It's like, I don't know how you got across without breaking an ankle. Yeah. And then it was like I don't know how, it was like almost my height of just straight up with like not really good footing. And like that, like all of those little portages were just like these horrible torture traps.
Yeah, but the cool thing about that, though, Julia, the cool thing about that is, so your mindset was like that. Andy had to keep me going because that was
fishing
heaven for me. Brook trout heaven. Like I would still be living on the Crow River if it wasn't for him to keep me going, right? Because I would stop at all these holes, and historical, like Incomplete Angler was written there, like the whole history of Algonquin was written on the Crow River, because the train would actually that's where the assets sit. Like I was full of history, full of brook trout, and I was casting. Oh my God, the amount of brook trout I caught! I caught over 60 brook trout in like an hour, right? I mean, no, I didn't catch anything there. But it wasn't a race at that point. It was sort of, in fact, at that point, I was in shape and mentally and physically at that point. Before that, on the East River, we get Nipissing. Andy, one night, he said, "This is stupid. Why we?" And really, for like good reason. And he looked at me in the bug shelter. He goes, "Why are we doing this, Kevin? We should actually just head south and actually go around Algonquin without these silly portages on these routes. Why are we doing this?" I went, yeah. And it was when they stole the whiskey from me. He found it funny. He goes, yeah, let's do this because this is funny. And it was this mental fortitude, right? And you imagine we did our food drop on Cedar, and then the next week, actually the only time we actually had problems too with the permit systems, because we booked our route. And we had all our campsites booked, and it was on Cedar Lake. And it was the long weekend, the first long weekend, I guess. What was it? It was second, I guess, long weekend. But we couldn't find a campsite, but we had a campsite, like we had a book, and we illegally camped on some island, and we didn't get light a fire. We actually bush camped it in, and we slept in the bug shelter, and so that was wrong, but we did it ethically. But it was a certain time where he goes, "Well, this is funny as hell." And then we got to Obiango, which he was like, this is because we had just done the Dixon Bonfield. He goes, "Kevin, you always said you would never do this portage again because it's 5 kilometers long." I went, "Yeah." And he goes, "You just did it." I went, "Yeah, I know." but we got Gord. Oh my Lord! Don't tell him I forgot his name. Fitter in Obiango at the time. Oh, Gord's frozen. Oh no! I thought you were frozen, Gord.
Whose name did you forget?
Was the outfitter at Obiango?
Jerry.
Jerry. Oh, don't tell Jerry I forgot his name. So Jerry picked us up in the boat, and he showed us lacrosse, and he goes, "Well, this is not really part of the Meanest Link." I went, "I don't really care. This is funny as hell." And then Jerry stopped off at every single historical point on Obiango because he knew the lake back of his hand and told us all about it, and that was what the trip was all about for us. And then that's when we found out. Actually, that's when we found out who sold the whiskey. Actually, so and that point we had
found out.
Well, you know how you can't make that stuff up. If someone stole whiskey because they didn't think you were doing ethically, who really cares? Like, Gord, when I went to you and said I was doing the Meanest Link, did I say it because it had a purpose? No, I just thought it would be a cool story. So,
yeah.
So I just had a question up on screen, right? And this is, I guess, kind of for anybody, or for Gord. But knowing that when in the park, you book by lake for any given night, due to unpredictable nature of the route. What if you don't make it to your lake for the night? What do you do in that case?
Camp
Because it
somewhere
could
else.
happen.
Yeah,
hope for the best, right?
Yeah, you got to make it to the lake. That's the law. So
that's the law. That's the law. It's written in the rules.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, technically, not just the Meanest Link, but any canoe trip in Algonquin. I mean, if you, for reasons of safety or weather or what have you, can't get to where you planned on camping, then nobody's going to come out and police you for not being where you're supposed to be, because it would have killed you to get there. So, but if you have to camp on another site, hopefully it's vacant, or if there are no vacant sites, you may have to just depend on the kindness of strangers to take you in, which of course nowadays is even more complicated. So, you got to be prepared to be flexible, and also plan your trip within your own boundaries. That's really important. A lot of people, if they're booking the Meanest Link trips, they get shut down by that message. Oh, that's too far to go in a day. So they have to call and convince the person at the call center that, yes, I can do this. So, you have to plan accordingly and be prepared for things happening and changing, and that's part of canoe tripping.
Mm-hmm. And somebody else is asking what the best type of canoe is to use for this type of a trip, given the nature of how difficult the first couple stages are.
I think a stand-up board is the best way to go.
Which it has been done, right?
Yeah. Kevin brings up a really good point, and out of respect to all the people who've done the Meanest Link, and out of respect to Kevin, who's done it his own unique way, I think it's really important to remember that when you take on the Meanest Link, you should do it your own way. You should do it a way that's comfortable for you and in a way that's special to you. And Kevin certainly did it in a way that was special to him. And so I have no qualms about the way that Kevin did it. I think the way that Kevin did it was fantastic. There are people who've done it on stand-up paddle boards very, very quickly. There are people we chose to do it unsupported. So, all on our own without anybody helping us along the way. But there have been other people out there who have actually gone faster on the link with support crews and meal drops and help en route and things like that. But my hat is off to those people for doing it their own unique way as well. And I think anybody who takes the link on chooses to do it in a way that's special to them. And for us, it was special to us that it still felt like a canoe camping trip. And that's why it was important to us to do it expedition style. But to each their own, different strokes for different folks.
Would you consider doing it again, Chris, Julia, if at a slower pace?
Yeah, possibly. Yeah.
Hey, Gord, was there any the history of the Meanest Link? Was there a time where someone left to go on it, and you went back to the staff and said, "Oh my God"? Well, probably when I went, but other than that,
I think this guy named Kevin decided. But there's been a couple of groups. I won't mention any names, but there was one group a couple of years ago. They just kind of randomly showed up and said, "Hey, we're doing the Meanest Link." Like, oh, okay. And they did not seem overly prepared or ready for it, but in the end, they actually did pretty well. They didn't complete it. They had an injury and pulled out, but in the end, they proved themselves capable. So some, appearances can be deceiving. And
but Gord, was there a time where you're sitting on the porch on your swing, your chair, and you're talking to your spouse, and you're having a little bit of tea, and you're like, "Oh, the Meanest Link. It was a good time. It was a good idea at the time. Where the hell did it go? Like really, what the hell happened to my innocence?"
Yeah, it did. It has gotten a little different than I imagined, but it's kind of cool. I mean, I'm lucky. I get to kind of be the curator, I guess, of the Meanest Link as part of my job, which is kind of a cool thing. Thanks to the Swift family and their support of it. I mean, it's a big part of their life, right? So,
but Gord, was there a time when your beard got longer and you kept on saying, "If you take the pebble from my hand," and then there was a point where you said, "You know what? You're not taking the pebble. You're not going." Have you ever? I'm joking, but I'm not really. Was there a point where someone came up to do the Meanest Link and you wanted to stop them to do it?
I would have to say no. I mean, I don't meet everybody. I mean, a lot of times I have conversations with people, and if I get the sense that somebody, doesn't really understand what they're getting into, I will be quite frank. Like, I don't think this is for you. Maybe you should go and do some more canoe routes and come back in a couple of years, kind of thing. And because it's a tough trip, as you all well know.
Well, remember Gord, remember, so when Andy and I showed up to go, we're at your place, and a gentleman came out of your place, and he was a little upset, and it was his third attempt. I think he was on his third or second son that went with him, and you had just rescued him. Rescued the son because of a broken ankle or whatever, and that guy had attempted how many times? And there's not a moment where you're like, we should have rethought this.
Well, yeah, I mean, that family I know very well, and they were very experienced canoe trippers. The father and his two sons had done many long distance trips in the park over the years, and then they were and it was a big challenge for me to help them plan their annual trip. So, their story is kind of interesting. So they kind of got wind of the Meanest Link and thought, okay, well, that sort of fits in our wheelhouse. It's long, it's covers a lot of ground, but and it's something different. But then, he had a tough time wrangling his adult sons to take time off work and go on the route. So sometimes it was two of them, sometimes it was one, and one was keener than the other. And they just unfortunately, and also they're from the States, so travel and limited time, so they could only do so much time. So they had to work within some challenging parameters, shall we say. And then they were just unlucky enough to have some injuries. So yeah, no, they were up for it, but they were just beset by bad luck, shall we say.
Big time.
That was one of the questions I actually had there. I was wondering, have you heard of, or do you know of any serious mishaps on the trip?
Oh, there have been a lot of ankle injuries, back injuries. Ankles and foot injuries are probably the top injuries that I can recall, particularly on the Big East River, where there's a lot of wading in rocky, moving water, and people making bad footwear choices, and and people, I mean, Kevin, Chris, and Julia can talk about that better than me. Just hauling heavy packs over ridiculous trails and trying to go or whatever, just trying to make some time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I remember when we did the check-in point at Oxtongue and we like ran up to the building and took a picture and we ran back and I just hear you calling out, "Are you limping?"
Well, I will say, Julia, you were not exactly running. You were hustling.
I was hustling.
Yeah.
We were going.
Julia injured her ankle slightly midway through, somewhere on the Crow River, and was a total trooper and just kept going. Very, very determined.
Yeah.
And,
it luckily wasn't like a sprain or an acute injury. I think it was just my Achilles had some pretty significant tendonitis over the days. And then I think my IT band also got really tight and inflamed. So that the IT band was actually my knee was what was hurting me that day.
Wow.
But like after going up the Big East River like all day long, like 56 kilometers of going up that river all day long, like at the end of that day, like my legs felt like they were on a different planet. Like I just walking around was a chore. Like it was crazy. Mm-hmm. And we did a training before it too. Mm-hmm. What's that?
I said you're a very fit person.
Yeah, it was. We did a ridiculous amount of training for it, and the Big East was still a huge challenge. And we keep
in mind, Chris was very chivalrous, and she was like, "I know you didn't want to do this trip with me, so I'm gonna do the entire hauling of the boat up the Big East, and you get to sit in the back. I'll princess you, and you just keep pulling with the paddle. You keep pulling, keep the boat moving forward." And so I like she did two people's worth of work.
No, so Julia's being very modest in the sense that our plan was because I did a lot of running training during the summer, and Julia was working at public health, and she was quite busy and couldn't put in the same amount of time. Like I was running 8 kilometers a day for months before we did the trip. And so part of our plan was I would pull the canoe up the Big East and Julia would push with the canoe paddle. And then when we got to Buzzkill Mountain, Julia would take over and she would tackle the mountain. And Julia totally rocked the mountain. Like Julia hauled the canoe and the food barrel up that thing, like 100 pounds on her back, like walking up a ski hill. Like she rocked it. So that was part of our plan.
I'm exhausted just thinking about it.
Well, no, just a bit of history here. So when I did the Big East with Andy, Andy, again, doesn't really know what we're doing and why, and I love him to bits for it. And he said, "So people did this trip?" I went, "Oh, yeah. It's an historical canoe route. That's why we're doing it." And he goes, "Kevin, you wouldn't do a route if it wasn't done in the history of time. I know that of you." I went, yeah. And then we get to Brent, and then Jake Pitchin said, "Why would you do the Big East? Like, that's the stupidest route you could ever imagine. Nobody would want to go up the Big East. It's never really been a route." And then I met a First Nations elder that we did a smudge with, and we talked about the Big East. He goes, "Yeah, my people never did that. Like, why would we do that?"
Yeah.
There's a reason why it's called the Meanest Link.
That's interesting to hear because Greg McDonald told me that there's archaeological evidence on McCraney Lake that indicates the Big East was an indigenous travel route. People would
but the archaeological evidence are dead people that actually did it and just they left behind. Sorry, that was wrong to say. That was a joke. Sorry.
Okay, you know what? We're just after 8 o'clock. I want to do the swag giveaway because we got a fantastic swag giveaway. Then we're going to get into some of the stories of Chris and Julia and their record-breaking attempt. And then I want to talk to Kevin about his book and some of the experiences he had with Andy. I know we've gotten a little bit of it already, but there's a lot more to share. I'm just going to drop you all into the basement for a moment here. Great chance to make a pit stop, get yourself a new beverage or get rid of one, and I'll bring you right back up right after the swag giveaway, okay? Cool. See you in a moment here. Alrighty, so yeah, hopefully everybody's getting some great information off this. Tonight for the swag giveaway, we got a great swag package that was given to us by tonight's sponsor, Algonquin Outfitters, who's celebrating 60 years of great service in the outdoor community. Thanks very much to them. They really stepped up to this, up to the plate on this one. I'm just going to show first of all what we have up for grabs tonight, and then I'll let you know how you can win this. Essentially, Algonquin Outfitters is giving a BioLite solar panel, a GSI Hall-Lite 2.7 pressure cooker, a Banff Mountain Film Festival buff, a Algonquin Outfitters towel, which is the background there, and you could see $100 gift card. So that's a value of a few $100s right there. And then also, our good friend Kevin Callan is going to be giving a Once Around Algonquin Park that is a signed copy. So you will get a copy of that. And then, of course, the regular Canoe Hound Adventures prize package, which is going to consist of a whole bunch of decals, including some new reflectives that we have available, and a whole bunch of patches and a couple of other items. We'll get that all into the package for you. So this is all going to go to one lucky winner. What you need to do, please do not put your answer in the chat over here. Okay, no answers over there. What I need you to do is send your answer to me by email, and you have until Saturday at 11 to send it to coasprize@gmail.com. And if you get the answer wrong, I'll even do you the courtesy of replying and giving you a hint so that you can send me the proper answer to make sure that you're entered. The more people that get into this, you'll all better. Well, I guess you won't better your chances, but no, you know what? By all means, it's a great package. Please do make sure you get in. Tonight's question is, and Gord touched on it earlier in the show, how many Algonquin Outfitter locations are connected by the Meanest Link Canoe Route? Okay, one of the reasons that they put it together, besides the fact that it was a tribute to Swifty or Meanest, Bill Swift Sr., but it also had a connection to all of the Algonquin Outfitter locations around Algonquin Park. So how many Algonquin Outfitter locations are connected by the Meanest Link Canoe Route? I will leave this up on screen for another minute just so that you can get the email address. Please do send your answer. You have until Saturday, 11 p.m., at which time I will make the drawing, and then I'll collect the winner's information and get it off to the respective parties so they can all send you your fantastic prizes. So who wouldn't want those great prizes? Anyways, I'm going to bring everybody back up here on screen now, and we're going to get into a few more stories. And I will invite some people up on screen if you'd like to ask a couple of questions, because we like doing that around here. Welcome back, guys and gals. Everybody's good? Everybody's got their refreshments, and we're all good? You see Chris has got a full coffee or teacup going there?
Coffee, yeah.
Coffee, that a girl. Cool. Alrighty, so earlier in the chat, Chris, I had seen somebody had asked a question. I believe it was Ashley. It was asking, how did you manage to swing recording, like filming, and crushing this canoe route? How did you manage to swing both of them and still pull off such a great time?
I think, if I'm being entirely honest, just a ton, like a ridiculous amount of planning, preparation, and training. I think I tell most people, if they're thinking about planning a trip in the park, say you're going on a week-long trip in Algonquin, you probably want to spend about 7 days of planning and preparation for it as well. But I think for this trip, I probably spent about 7 months of planning and preparation for it, and just like an absurd amount of training. And I knew that the filming was probably going to eat away at our progress every day. And so everything else just had to be completely dialed in. And so I knew, like, I dug up every ounce of information that I could on the route itself, and read everybody's trip reports, watched all the videos, read all of Gord's resources, dialed in all of our gear. We practiced with all of our gear over and over again. We went out for long paddles. We did hill training, repeat stuff. We did a lot of running, just a ridiculous amount of training for it. With that said, I want to be very clear, and I want to make sure that everybody knows that the Meanest Link is not a race. And so even though I think a lot of people would associate how quickly we did it as racing, if I'm being entirely honest, it was more meditative when we were out there. Like we were putting in some really long days, but it felt very, very meditative. You know, just kind of paddling along at a very steady clip, and just kept moving. But with that said, like there are stretches in the park that feel like they go on for, you know, forever. And when you're going down the Nipissing for a day and a half, it starts to feel the same, and you just sort of start to meditate and sink into the route.
Mm-hmm. So, but with that being said, now you were recording, and people won't be able to see any of your footage yet because you actually are doing something with the footage that you recorded from the adventure. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so
yes, and actually, do we have to wait 5 years before we see it?
No. It's a documentary. I filmed Kevin last fall for it after we did it in the summer. I filmed Gord as well, did an interview with Gord, did an interview with Jamie. Jamie was part of the crew who did it, did the full link the first time, or the complete loop the first time. And it's all going into a documentary that I'm working that's going to be submitted to a documentary film festival later on this summer. So.
Sorry, our child is having a hard time falling asleep tonight.
Yeah, Cedar is.
He wants to watch the show. That's why.
Yeah. What's that?
He wants to watch the show.
Yeah.
Cheers to Julia, by the way. Not only is she a parent of Cedar, which is a cute kid. I've seen many times.
He's adorable.
He really is. Did the Meanest Link, and also is working during the COVID thing at the hospital. Cheers to you.
Thank you very much.
Well, Julia's a public health nurse, and she's rocking it, working vaccine clinics and tracking stuff. She's doing a lot. She's doing a lot.
Thank you. And Chris is doing a lot at home too. Like, also mom to Cedar did like all of the planning for the Meanest Link. So yeah.
Well, really, Julia, no, you're basically taking care of COVID. Well, you know, Chris is trying to edit some video that we're waiting for like 10 years, and taking care of a really good kid. So.
I should say honorable mention goes to Cedar, because like
he was with us a lot of our training.
All these so these are our training calendars from before the Meanest Link. Sorry, that one's not much, but these are our training calendars for before the Meanest Link. And Cedar was out there in the jogger stroller.
Or being carried up and down mountains in a backpack.
Yeah, and the little guy was there happily in a stroller,
eating Cheerios in a canoe.
Or in a backpack going up and down hills. The little guy's a trooper.
Andy and I had the same thing before our trip.
Oh, so you were piggybacking Andy and vice versa? Up and down hills?
Yeah, we did the same thing.
Oh, wow. So between Chris and Julia now, let's talk about, you know, it's not all about breakneck speeds and stuff like that. Tell us some of your favorite parts of the trip.
Oh my gosh. For me, I think when we paddled across Opeongo at night, it was flat calm at that particular time, and the Perseid meteor shower was raining overhead. And we just saw shooting star after shooting star, and
loon calls, and people had set up camp and had these, I don't know if they were lanterns or what, but it was just really peaceful going along and seeing the campsite set up.
It was incredible. And then we saw some beautiful sunrises out there, like coming down the Oxtongue River on the last day, just phenomenal sunrises.
On most of our camping trips, we, you know, start our day in the canoe like well after sunrise, and then usually get in, you know, ish before sunset. So it was really nice to have some early mornings and some later evenings where the water was flat, calm, and it was, dawn or dusk. It's just a really beautiful time to be out on a lake, and we got to enjoy a lot of that.
Yeah.
I also loved the Petawawa.
Yeah.
That was gorgeous.
Yeah. Now, I will say, even though we did get a fair amount of flat water, we did encounter we got hit by a storm, and we got some pretty intense winds on Lake of Bays. And this is probably another consideration that people should think about when they're doing the Meanest Link, which is the weather can really play into your particular link. And I can tell you right now, when we were paddling across Lake of Bays on our last day, we were paddling straight into 3-foot waves, just like crazy wind coming at us and giving it all we could to get through it. But if we weren't out on the last day of the Meanest Link, I can tell you right now, we would not have gone out paddling in that. And so that will play into your Meanest Link as well. Weather can really affect how your Meanest Link goes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cool. Got a quick question here, and this is actually probably going to go Gord's way because it's on the I'm on the Meanest Link page on Algonquin Outfitters website right now. But Kevin Outdoors is asking, what is this business about Rule 10, certain drinks at certain locations? And the rule actually reads on the website, each trip member has to drink a particular refreshing beverage on that particular site. For more information on Rules 9 and 10, please contact the Meanest Link Advisory Board at Oxtown Lake. She's actually got one.
Oh, cool. That's awesome. Awesome. Wow.
What can you tell us about that, Gord?
Well, it's part of the tradition and history of the link because Jenny Cream Ale was Swifty's favorite beer. And if you're not familiar, it's an American beer from, I think, Genesee Brewery in New York State. And anyway, so again, in trying to think of ways to honor Swifty, we thought that visiting his favorite campsite on his favorite lake, which was Lake Lavier, and the campsite is well documented, or if you need help figuring it out, like some people apparently do. We dreamed up this idea of having a. Am I still here?
Yeah, you're just breaking up a little.
Okay, anyway, so we dreamed up the idea of having a Jenny Cream Ale on that campsite. And that's the only beverage-related rule. And how you go about doing that and bringing an illegal container into Algonquin Park is entirely up to you.
Please pack it up. Please pack it up.
Yep.
That's awesome. So I want to play a little game here with Julia and Chris and Kevin. So the way both of you did your Meanest Link trips were a little bit different, and this is going to be like a little food barrel call out. Okay, obviously, Chris and Julia probably had a bit of a different diet going than maybe you and Andy had, Kevin. So I want Chris or Julia to mention one food item, and I want to hear Kevin's counter food item from his food barrel. This is like one of your questions, Kevin, the rock star one. Who would you have as bandmates for guitar or drum?
Don't ask.
No, we're not going to get into that.
No, I asked Ian Tamlin. I asked that question during a whiskey chat last week. We're going off tangent, but you guys love this, right? So I put a script out to all these people I do whiskey chats with. I don't always I never keep the script. But one was what musician would you paddle with back in the day? Would it be Gordon Lightfoot, Bruce Coburn, John Denver? And I don't know Ian Tamlin. I just love his music. I was a little nervous about this interview. And his response was, love all the other questions you asked me, Kevin, but that band thing, that's just stupid. First of all, John Denver's dead, so I'd have to carry his dead body. Why would I do that? Gordon Lightfoot, he couldn't carry a teapot across the portage. Why would I go with him? And Bruce Coburn would be singing about dead trees in the forest. Like, sorry, I went off tangent. What was the question again?
Okay, so Chris and Julia, you guys obviously had a different diet than what Kevin had on his trip. So we'll go through like 5 items. Okay, what name one item, Chris or Julia, and then I want to hear Kevin's counter. What's in their food barrel that would match that? You follow me on that?
We ate a lot of Lara bars, which is like a natural food bar.
Yeah.
So that would be our snack food.
Okay,
Yeah.
Kevin.
Well, we had Gorb, and we weren't allowed to do the whole put the hand in. You can't. Gorb is like you can't. Yeah, we did Gorb. I actually dehydrated. I did food caches, right? So I did really good dehydrated meals, but no bars, no. Like what you want to vomit every hour or like?
Okay, another Chris, Julia, another one.
So we, I will say we're not vegan. We do eat some meat, but we did the entire Meanest Link trip on a plant-based diet. And one of the things that we did in the morning was we did plant-based vegan protein shakes first thing in the morning. So
what?
Yeah. What? Well, so it's important. So Kevin laughs, but this is something in terms of sports nutrition. After you do something really intense, you're going to get delayed onset muscle fatigue or soreness. It's called DOMS. And unless you consume a fair amount of protein, like you're just not going to have the building blocks to repair what you're breaking down every day.
Or you take Advil and Scotch in the morning, you're good.
So there's Kevin's counter. Yeah.
There was a fair amount of Advil. Yeah.
Okay, what about, so we also consumed something called Tailwind. Have you ever heard of that?
Tailwind?
Mm-hmm.
It's like you got the toots?
No, it's like a Gatorade powder, but yeah.
Okay.
So
I'm speechless.
So I guess it's safe to assume that both parties had very, very different. I was expecting to hear like macaroni and cheese every night for Kevin or something like that.
No. I eat really well. I actually there's a video of me organizing. In fact, Andy had nothing to do with it. Again, like he just showed up on the porch. But there's a video on my KC Happy Camper of me packing all the meals, and it was a set meal every night per food drop. So I did 3 food drops. One at Rain Lake, which Randy did for me from Algonquin Outfitters. Another one was at Cedar Brent that I got mail ordered, and then Obiango. And curry, pasta, rice. I eat really well out there. And yes, we did not have chewy bars, and what was you had in the morning? I don't know. We had coffee and blueberry pancakes, and like we're out there for the good time, man. I don't know what the hell you ate. Jesus.
Tailwind it was.
Yeah, Tailwind. You tooted along the way. Well, we did as well. We tooted as well.
Incredible.
Sorry, Gord. You got to stop this interview. It's getting out of control.
Next question is for Gord. So Gord, what would you recommend for somebody that is actually planning on doing the trip? What is a comfortable time frame to be able to do, say, the entire route? If somebody was going to do all 4 sections.
I think that's a very good question, actually. I think it depends how many people and sort of your style, but I think for experienced Algonquin Park canoe trippers, trying to do it as a canoe trip where you're getting a good night's sleep and getting to a campsite in daylight and not paddling in the dark, probably 12 to 14 days, and even 12 is kind of you got to get up and get going. I think if you want to do it in under 10 days, you need to be prepared to put in some very long days. You need to be prepared to probably paddle at night. And then if you want to take your time, well, it's up to you. I mean, the record longest trip so far is 24 days. And then I can't tell you about it, but there's a planned trip in the works that could be potentially longer.
Is that right, eh?
It's cool. And so, sorry, there was a guy that did it solo, even though it's against the rules, and he just put his first video out just recently, too. So I know that's against the rules, but it's a really good video.
Yeah, it was senior put that out. It was really good.
Well, I'll just talk about that solo thing. I mean, originally we made the rule of don't do it solo, and it was really a safety thing more than anything. And now, since the advent of InReach and Spot messengers and more, I don't know, advanced communication technology, I think it's okay to do it solo if you're prepared in that way. And again, it takes a special kind of planning and special kind of person really to want to do it solo. So yeah, and good for Russ. Russ took his time. He wanted to do it all in one go, and he had some equipment issues and foot issues. He lost his croc. I actually brought my Russ Senior Pro model croc here just to show you, because it's got a special strap that you can't lose it, and it's camouflaged so that you won't find it if you do lose it. So if Russ is watching, this is the croc you need, man. Anyway, so yeah, I think for experienced canoe trippers, tandem, probably 12 to 14 days is and it even depends on the time of year. If you do it early in the season when high water, that is a factor, or late in the season with low water. So there's a lot of things to consider.
Yeah, wow. And remoteness of this trip, obviously it's going through some pretty remote areas. What if there are safety issues and things happen? Are these all well-traveled routes now that are in true form with Algonquin Park, where the chances are you'll see somebody within a few hours or type of thing?
No. Also a very good question, though, and I think I should make it clear that you're on your own. This is your canoe trip, and even though Algonquin Outfitters supports and promotes the Meanest Link to a degree, I mean, nobody from AO is going to get in the truck and come and get you. So you got to figure out your own backup systems, your own support systems, who is going to come and get you if you decide to pull out at Brent. There's some good stories about things like that too. Some very creative evacuations. Yeah, and again, if you have a satellite phone or a Spot or an InReach, that can make a big difference. But knowing when to use that, how to use that, and that your support people are ready to help you out at any given time.
Yeah. So in other words, this isn't a cakewalk. This is actually not for the faint of heart. Go there.
No,
work, right?
Yeah, to go back to your remoteness question, I mean, there are the parts of the link that are out of the park, even though the Big East is a very rugged part of the trip. It's relatively accessible if you have a four-wheel drive vehicle. There are logging roads that go in there, no cell reception. And then the rest of the link, you have different park access points that you can use as, escape routes. People have pulled out at Rain Lake, at Magnetawan, Cedar, different places. So you have to bear all those things in mind as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there, like you mentioned earlier too, there are 4 legs to this trip, right? So you don't have to complete the entire Meanest Link in one trip. You could actually do a section at a time, right?
Yeah, correct. a lot of people, you know, for reasons of time or mostly time, you know, we'll just do one section at a time, take a couple of seasons to complete the whole route, or do 2 sections like the 6-on-6 group with Mark Rubino and Jeff McMurtry and others. They started in Huntsville. No, wait, they started at Oxton, went to Brent, and then started at Brent and finished the route, something like that. Same with Russ Sr. He did it over 2 seasons. Some other people, you know, just tick off one leg at a time. Some people do one leg and never come back.
So what I've got here on these are maps from the Algonquin Outfitters website on the Meanest Link. The first map I showed here is section 1. This is Oxton to Huntsville. And when you get to each Algonquin Outfitters, which there's 4, right? Do you have to go in and report? Is that how things kind of go?
Depends on the time of day. I mean, sometimes you might get to an Algonquin Outfitters location at midnight, so there's no one there to report to. So you have to, you know, at least document the fact that you were there, take a selfie, whatever. You know, and if you're not in a hurry and the store is open, sure, if you go in and chit chat, anybody there will be happy to talk to you. I mean, you might meet the 18-year-old kid that's working their first summer that has no idea what you're doing, but on the other hand, you might run into Nate Muskoka at the Huntsville store, or Jake Pigeon at Brent, or other legendary people along the way. So, you know, even our staff are great resources when you're on the trip.
Yeah, cool. Kevin, I got a question for you, and maybe you could clear some water on this. When you and Andy were doing the trip, you run into a situation where you come across a private property landowner who didn't want to allow you to pass. Is that still the case?
So that's been solved thanks to Huntsville. Yeah, so that was really awkward. If you were in my shoes at that time, it was the second last portage of the entire trip, right? Of 102 portages, right? So Annie again was like, "Are we done?" Because he was supposed to give up at this point. He was going to leave me at Obiango because he had to go back to work. But he goes, "If we really push it and get this thing done, I can be with you to the end of the trip. And I really want to do it at this point." I went, "Why? You really didn't care when we started." And he goes, "I care now." I went, "Okay, all right, whatever." So he's holding the boat. I go up and I'm looking for this portage. Hat Wilson's old guidebook shows a park there and a portage there. So I'm following that information. And it's not there. And there's a house. So I go up to this woman that's actually running around with these Canada geese. And she's very upset that I'm there. I went, whoa, like I'm just portaging. No, you can't. You can't be here. It's private property. I went, really? Like I don't know if you know what I've just done, but I just did 400 plus kilometers of canoeing, 102 portages, and this is the second last one. I go, sorry, I'm portaging. And one of the geese that she's taking care of is injured, and I worked in wildlife rehab for many years, and I took care of the goose for her. In fact, I gave her the number for someone to call to come and get the goose. And she goes, "Well, you can portage through my property just this once." I went, "Fine, because I'll never do this trip again." So I go to get Andy, and Andy goes, and Andy was waiting for a long time because he's at at the canoe, and he goes, "What's going on?" I went, "Just say nothing. Just walk and go." In fact, I lost my sunglasses on that portage, and I never went back to get them because we weren't going back. And Gord will tell more information about this, but there is now a portage there. So what happened, Gord?
Well, the woman that you met, that family, a very famous, eccentric family of Dwight Lake of Bays, who I won't name, they decided to sell the property, and the Lake of Bays Heritage Association bought it, and then Craig McDonald, who we mentioned before, who's involved with that group. He volunteered to reopen the historical portage that you probably followed. So now it's a marked sign portage, and the property is used for, it's kind of a private meeting place. They're having some troubles with access. That's another story. But anyway, it's used for small group meetings, and hopefully will be developed into some kind of nature facility. I would also throw in that Craig, in his retirement, has not given up on trail development and has taken on the Ox Tongue River as his personal project, and is now working on developing portages along the section of the Ox Tongue from Ox Tongue Lake to Lake of Bays.
Nice.
Yeah, he'd be the best to do that too. Actually, really knowledgeable person and fantastic. And I knew something would happen with that too, because there's a lot of things that happened the last 2 days of that trip. I mean, we even had the OPP come over. That was a really funny story. Well, not at the time, but you could imagine we were 2 hours away from finishing the trip, and I did not know that was the day that the town of Huntsville has
bathtub
race. Like, and so we all thought, you know, all these people are gathering, and I said to Andy, well, they must be here for us. We're finishing the trip. They must be here for
celebration.
Helicopters all around us, and the OPP arrive, and they come over, and they're just checking to see if we have all the emergency stuff. But it was a good cop and bad cop thing, right? So the one male officer, he was very like, oh, and of course I'm like, look, I abide by the rules. I've always been taught that. I have no problem with that. But you're really pissing me off right now, because you're coming way too close to our canoe, and he's creating these massive waves with his boat, right? And when you're going to dump us, and I shove his boat away from him. I go, you're going to dump us. Get away from us. I have no problem with what you're doing right now. And Andy goes, Kevin, could you just calm the Irish temper down for once? Because we're almost done this friggin' trip, okay? And the female officer in the back, she found that funny, and she started giggling, right? And Gord, you probably even know these people in the boat with her, so I don't even. So it ended up, the male officer goes, well, do you have the proper emergency devices to keep yourself safe? I was like, yes, I do, but could you tell me what they are? And then he goes, see, Kevin, this is where it all goes wrong with you, okay? It's all fun and games until just Kevin gets the pot, right? And he got everything except the one item. He didn't mention the throw rope. I went, you're good, except you forgot something. So you know what? I'm good to go with my knowledge, except yours. And he goes, shut the hell up, Kevin. And the woman laughs, and she goes, just let them go, okay? Just let them go.
So he was probably a fan of yours and just wanted to bust you, right?
No, it was an awkward moment. And then we came around the corner, and literally in Huntsville, Gord, you know this, right? You come around the corner in the river, and there's the race that's going on with the bathtub, and we didn't know. And the organizer literally yelled out, "Get out of the race! You shouldn't be here." I'm like, no, they're here for us. We just finished the Meanest Link. They're here for us. But no, that was wrong. In fact, only 2 people were there to meet us, and over 200 people were there for the back of the race. So.
Wow.
Oh, I got to turn the fan back on. Oh, my God.
Just a reminder, everybody in the chat, I did put the link in there a couple of times. If anybody wants to come up and ask anybody a question, maybe share a story or add some information, greatly appreciated. If you do pop on up, I will drop that link in there one more time. And a paste button. There we go. Cool. So, Kevin, what prompted you? Did you do this trip specifically to build yourself a story for Once Around Algonquin, or was that sort of an after fact?
I'm always thinking of the story, ever since I was a kid. I never meant to write a book about it. Never meant to. Well, I meant to videotape it, obviously, right?
Yeah, Kevin. We should mention Kevin also did a great video series on this as well. So
extremely good. Yeah,
definitely check that out as well. Kevin's
it's always a great video when him and Andy are together.
Oh, and yes, Chris, and mine is out. Yours, we're just still waiting.
It'll be worth the wait.
It'll be worth the wait.
I see we've got somebody in the basement here. Let me bring her up.
Sure.
Hi, Sue. How you doing?
Hey.
Got a question for somebody on panel tonight?
Yeah, I'm curious. I'm just sitting outside. I just got comfy outside because my kid's going to sleep.
Hey, Sue.
Hey, what can I expect on the Crow River this year?
Ooh. Yeah, so, and as we mentioned earlier in the live stream, I think the Crow River was sort of like one of those unexpectedly difficult sections of the trip that we weren't anticipating. Everybody talks about the Big East, which is arguably the most difficult part of the entire trip. And a lot of people talk about the Alders, and people talk about crossing Opeongo, which is very challenging in bad weather. And it felt like hardly anybody talked about the Crow River and how difficult that is. But going up the current on the Crow and then facing all those really challenging portages going uphill that are very difficult to get in and out of, that was a bit of a surprise. So I would temper your expectations when you're going through there and just be prepared to spend more time going through that area than you think you will.
Yeah, it's totally doable. Just like plan a few breaks. Maybe go fishing.
Yeah.
I think I'm taking my fishing rod.
It's also really important to remember that I think there's the blue-green algae on Lake Labielle, which means that you can't pump the water on Labielle, and you have to pump water on the Crow River before you get into Labielle. So, make sure you're well topped up before you go into that lake.
When are you planning on doing the trip, Sue?
So Peter and I are going to start near the beginning of July. So we're going to do Brent to Opeongo. And then we're going to skip over to Oxtongue because we already did Opeongo to Oxtongue last year.
Nice.
And then we're going to plan to do Oxtongue to Huntsville the next day.
Beautiful.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
You're going to love it.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it.
And then when are you planning on tackling section 2?
I don't know yet. The rest of my summer is kind of booked up with some other big trips, so it's probably going to have to wait till next year. Maybe.
You got it in you. I see you've been doing a lot of training too. So
it's going to happen. So it's just we've got other trips planned, and we can only book so many days for like this next section coming up because that's how life goes. So yeah,
nice.
It'll be fun.
Yeah.
I'm everyone keeps talking about all the other stuff, and then I'm a Crow. What about the Crow? I hear the Crow being brought up, so I'm like, okay, I gotta ask.
Yeah.
Just some challenging paddling and some challenging portaging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm getting ready for that.
The Crow, you're basically portaging most of the time, and you're portaging uphill.
Yeah.
You're not paddling the Crow. But you won't see anybody there. And if you see anybody, they're probably just as insane as you are. So,
just as crazy as we are.
Yeah.
That's all right. It'll get my legs ready. I'm hiking the La Cloche this summer as well. So the walking and the portaging will be good.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Good luck.
Thanks.
You're all making me feel very lazy. Awesome. So, did you have any other questions that you like to?
Don't worry.
Did you have any other questions you'd like to ask?
No, I just figured, no one was showing up. I was like, I'll come and ask.
Yeah.
Nice.
I'll join in.
Awesome. Question for Chris and Julia. What was your longest day out there paddling?
That would actually be the day that we started at Radiant and finished at the south end of Opeongo.
Was it? Or was it the other day? From Opeongo.
Well, okay, wait. Do you mean longest distance or longest time?
Longest time.
I think it was that because we were really gung-ho that morning. I think we started at like 4 or 5 in the morning.
Right.
And then we we went basically nonstop until like 2 a.m.
Yeah, I think it was either an 85 or a 90 kilometer day, I think, in there somewhere. Yeah.
So looking at the map, you're talking from Radiant Lake, which is around here, to the end of Opeongo.
Yeah, I can't see your mouse, but yes. It's,
oh, okay. Oh, wait. Let me go on the,
like,
on the actual map. So from here
yep.
down to here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, okay. I remember the night before, or the afternoon before, we were chatting with Jake at Brent, and we're asking him, like, do you like have any updates on the weather reports for, you know, tomorrow in Opeongo? And he's like, you're not gonna make it to Opeongo tomorrow. And we're like, well, we were in Huntsville just a couple days ago, or I guess 3 days before. And he was like,
I got a question. Question. Did you actually see the moose when you passed it by?
You get to see a lot of scenery. You're just moving all the time.
We did see moose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We got to see a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But we were just always just spent as much time moving forward as possible.
Yeah. Yeah. Within our ability. Yeah.
And you guys, you two hit all the points. You stopped at Lake Lavier and Camp Pathfinder and the whole 9 yards.
Yeah. Yes. The Swifties' favorite campsite was actually amazing.
Yeah.
That was one of our high points because, as Chris mentioned, it's very important to pump water before you get to Lavier or Laviel. I'm not sure how to pronounce it now.
Yeah.
And so we had like about half of our water supply, which was still a fair amount, and we're coming close to getting onto Lavier, and I think we were like, I'm like, how much more paddling do we have to do before we get to more water? And you're like, oh, just down this one lake and down this other lake, and then we're good. And she failed to mention that those are like two of the biggest lakes in the park, and then you have to do the 5.6 kilometer portage after that.
Outside of Opeongo.
Yeah. But these are big lakes, right?
Lakes, yeah.
So by the time we get to Swifty's campsite, we're like very thirsty. And there's this beautiful beer. And I had just planned to have a sip. And you were going to have a sip, and we were going to commemoratively, you know, pour some over the campfire, and then pack out our drink. But instead I started drinking and I couldn't stop myself. I just kept going and my instincts took over. And then of course, because I also like I probably hadn't been eating enough that day because we were just go, and it's hard to eat on the go while you're doing all of those portages up the Crow. So by the time we finished our tour, I was drunk. Like, I'm a lightweight to begin with, let alone when I am a little dehydrated and hungry. So
yeah,
I had such like a low moment in the Crow, and then on Lavier, I was just like,
yeah,
life is good, and everything feels wonderful.
The half beer that we each had hit us pretty hard.
Yeah,
all things considered.
It's a pretty small can, but yeah.
Wow. Did you see any trash on the campsite? Was everybody responsible?
No,
it was
well maintained. Yeah. But I think what happened, and Sue, what sort of surprised us a little bit through that leg was we encountered more wind on Lavier and Dixon than we anticipated, and so it took us longer to get through there. And so based on our rates of paddling, I thought we would get through that lake quicker, and then we'd be able to make it on the amount of water that we had pumped. But it took way longer to paddle through those lakes with all the wind. And we were very low on water. And at that stage, we were sort of rationing our water. Whereas I think we should have pumped as much water as we possibly could have before Lavier, topped up all of our bottles, and then had way more water to drink through those big lakes. Because we were And then right after that, you had to do the Dixon Bonfield portage, which is the biggest portage in the park. And so we went into that partially dehydrated, and it's just not, it's not optimal. So pump as much water as you possibly can before you get to Lavier.
Good to know, because I would not have known that.
Yeah.
There is signage up before you enter that area. So it's a good reminder.
Yeah, and we had done research actually before the trip, and this is something that I found in the Facebook group that Gord runs, which is that there's apparently a stream somewhere near the beginning of the Dixon Bonfield portage where you can pump water. We found that stream, and there was hardly any water in it. So we were also paddling across Lavier and Dixon, thinking that when we got to the Dixon Bonfield portage, we'd be able to pump water on that stream. And that was not the case. And so we were even more deficient in water going through that portage than we thought we were. So yeah, pump as much as you can before. Yeah, that stream may have water that you can pump and it might not. So yeah.
Cool. Just putting the final call in the chat there if anybody wants to pop in and ask a question. Sue, I'm going to drop you down below if you want to.
That's okay. I'm going to go and I'm going to do my nighttime stuff anyway.
Cool. Thanks very much for coming on up. I appreciate it.
Bye.
Talk soon. Excellent. So, Gord, there's a question here I've been holding on to from Keith Park for you because you would probably know best. What are the ages of the youngest and oldest to complete the route?
Oh, for the love of God!
The full route, ooh, that's a good question. I would say if we're talking the entire link, doing what we call the full link, so doing all 4 sections at once, the youngest are probably campers from Camp Pathfinder who would be, I'm going to say like 12, 13-year-olds maybe in that age group. Maybe. And then the oldest to do the full route, I would guess probably the late John Scarlett, who I think he and his brother Mark.
Yeah.
I think John was in his mid-70s when they did it. I'd have to go back and look, but yeah. And then overall, like Johnny Stinson and his son Hiker did a section last year, and Hiker, I think, I don't know, Sue probably knows better than I think he was like 8 or 9. And they did the Opeongo to Oxtongue section, and then some other old folks have done sections, people in their late 60s, 70s, so early 70s. So yeah, it's for everybody.
Wow. Yeah, so I guess it just goes to say that with the proper amount of planning, anybody can do it, or almost anybody can do it. Just gotta.
Well, yeah, but to put that in context, like Johnny and his son, I mean, they're a very active outdoor family, and you know that kid is an experienced canoe tripper beyond and hike, you know, and his name Hiker, but you know they're an experienced outdoor father-son duo, so they've done lots of stuff. So this was not the first time doing something adventurous for that kid. And then, you know, other on the far end of the scale, the older end of the scale, like the Scarlett brothers, they did their first canoe trip in Algonquin Park in 1963, I think. So they're from upstate New York, and but real keen Algonquin Park trippers. So, excuse me, you know, a wealth of experience and fitness, and quite within their capabilities.
All right.
With nice light Kevlar canoes.
That's I think light canoes nowadays would probably make the task a little bit easier, obviously, right? Yeah, trying to hike those things. Chris and Julia, you were using a Swift canoe, I believe.
We were. It was beautiful.
Yeah, we were paddling, and in the interest of full disclosure, we were sponsored by Swift at the time, who very kindly lent us a carbon Kevlar Kuwaitan, a 17-foot Kuwaitan that was just a dream to paddle. And yeah, I absolutely love that boat. We nicknamed the boat Chrissy, actually, after Chrissy Wellington, who is a 4-time Ironman world champion. But we love paddling Chrissy, and very, very quick boat. Very quick boat. Yeah.
And Kevin, no doubt, Novacraft.
What's that, sorry?
Oh, I said Kevin, no doubt, Novacraft. One of your
Yeah. In fact, they just came out with their new lightweight model at the time of that year. And Tim, the owner at the time, who's retired now, he said, give this a try and tell me what you think. And that was the trial period. And I got to say, it got banged to crap. I went to give it back to him at the end of the trip, and I remember he goes, "Yeah, keep it. Nobody will ever want this boat." Yeah, so it was good. No, it worked out really well. It was so Andy carried it with his pack, and I carried a pack across the portage. I think the canoe weighed 42 pounds. No, 38 pounds. So yeah, it was good. Good choice.
Did the two of you manage to do all your portages in one carry?
Yeah, we had to, and that's what Andy and I don't do that.
Yeah.
We don't. I get it that people do that. I understand it. And for this trip, we had to. Like, why would you ever do it twice? The one gentleman that did the solo, he did it twice, and I'm thinking, oh my God, you poor bugger! Like, really? Could you imagine doing 102 portages twice?
Yeah.
Like, so
3 times really, because you have to go out and then back and then out again.
Yeah, so you're only doing like 3 times instead of 4. Like I get it, but at the same time, it's like, so we did that, and our luxury items. I brought a camp pillow, and he actually brought a camp chair, which I was like, "Are you serious?" He goes, "Well, whatever, Kevin." But he's an ox, and the only dangerous part of portaging in the entire park is going across the highway. Gord, you will tell everybody about that. There's a portage across the highway from the one campground to the other. And the video I did a video series on Casey Happy Camper. Sorry, I'm really friggin' hot here right tonight. Oh my God. It's 34 degrees in my house right now. God.
Wow.
Oh yeah, welcome to the life on the hill. Anyway, so what happened was when we went across there, that was the most dangerous part because it's on a corner of the highway. The Highway 60 going through Algonquin. And when you see the video of us, and I'm, come on, let's go. That was not made up. So.
Yeah, I've seen a few instances. You mentioned the Northern Scavengers; they did a section on that too, or that crossing.
Yeah.
Yeah, crazy. Well, you know what? We're at the 9 o'clock hour. I just want to put one more question up here, and actually, one of my viewers has hit it on the nose here. We'll start with Chris and Julia and ask you, overall, what did completing the Meanest Link mean to you? How did you feel after you finished it?
Oh, you first. Gosh.
Great question, Josie. Thanks.
Yeah, that was a great question. It felt like the trip of a lifetime. And it is hands down my absolute favorite Algonquin canoe trip of all time. And I felt so accomplished after it. And I have to thank the folks at Algonquin Outfitters and Gord Baker and Alex Hurley for creating it because, if it wasn't out there, then we probably wouldn't have done it. And so I thank them for creating it because it kind of spurred us on to give it a go and give it a try. And the reason behind why it was created, it kind of gets you out of your comfort zone and it kind of encourages you to try something that is a little outside of what you would normally do. And I think when you do those types of things, you learn a lot about yourself and you learn a little bit about how resilient you are or come away feeling stronger than you knew you were. And it's a very confidence boosting kind of trip. And it's something that I will cherish for a lifetime. Yeah. Ditto.
And the fact that you got to do it with somebody so special in your life, right? I'm sure it makes it that much more.
Yeah.
How about yourself, Kevin? I'd like to ask Andy this question too, but
you wouldn't talk about it. A really good friend of mine to actually do that for me. A lot of things were going on at the time. One is I needed to go back to the familiar. So Algonquin to me is the place. It's a place that I soak in solace. I've always, ever since I was a kid, right? I love the people. I love Jake. I love Gord. I love everybody a part of Algonquin. They because they love it so much, and I want to reconnect with that. I mean, I was going through a bad time at the time that nobody knew. My wife over 20 years decided to leave me, and nobody knew. And I went on that trip. Andy did not know on that trip what was going on. And I needed to go to wilderness that was familiar to me and to people that were friends to me and to do a trip. That's why I did that trip. And sorry, I really don't talk about that much. So that's why I really, and the Nipissing, buggy as hell, but you want to see a moose, go there. And if you want to catch a trout, go in the Crow River. And if you want to prove yourself, do it as fast as you want. But I did as slow as I want because I was 50 at the time and I didn't really care.
Yeah. And we'll finish off with Gord. Gord, so what would you say to somebody that's planning this trip? Like a final piece of advice, something that you must do or must not do in order to partake in this thing?
Well, just really do a lot of research. Listen to people like Chris, Julia, and Kevin. Watch the videos, read the book, ask questions, make sure you know what you're getting into. That kind of sums it up, I think.
Yeah.
Be safe.
Well, you know what? Thanks for founding this or co-founding this with Alex. You know what? I look forward to the day that hopefully I can tackle it. I don't know if it'll be this year with the traffic that's going to be in Algonquin Park once everybody's cut free, but I'm hoping it will happen one day soon. For everybody in the chat, if anybody's looking for resources in this, you can check the description below. I have links to the Facebook page that Gord is an admin for the Meanest Link, as well as the link to the Meanest Link page on Algonquin Outfitters website, Kevin Callan's YouTube channel. You can go there and check out his whole video series. There's all kinds of stuff there for Chris and Julia as well. So be sure to check these people out. They've done it. I'm sure there's a lot of other resources. As you mentioned, Alex and Noah, the Northern Scavengers, they had a great series as well. There is a lot of information out there. If anybody's partaking in this, please be safe. It's not for the faint of heart. But you know what? Do it. Just do it. Whose motto is that? Nike, right? Just do it.
Just do it.
Just do it. All right. So we're going to call an end to the show tonight. I'm just going to drop the four of you down into the green room. Please stick around for the after show, and I'll be with you all in a few moments. Thanks very much for spending your time with us on Tuesday night here, guys and gals. It's greatly appreciated.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. Well, to everybody in the chat tonight, thanks very much for tuning in. It was a great topic. Hopefully the show went the way that you wanted it to go, and hopefully you've learned some and got some really cool information. These people have done the trip, so they know what it's all about. I wanted to try and get something on the spectrum of somebody who's done it very quick. I wanted to get somebody who's actually done it more relaxed. And then, of course, I also wanted to get some history on the route itself. If you check out the website from Algonquin Outfitters, who are our sponsors, once again, thank you to them for sponsoring the show tonight. But if you want more information on the Meanest Link, go check it out because there's a lot of great information on their webpage there about that. Like I said, link is in the description down there. And yeah, get all the information you can. Just a few closing notes here before we sign off for the evening. Once again, the question for tonight's swag giveaway was, how many Algonquin Outfitter locations does the Meanest Link connect? I'll give you one hint. If you don't know the answer, check the thumbnail for this show. You'll find your answer on there. The great prizes are all going to one person. You can send your answer to COASprize at gmail.com. And that will happen. You can go back to the swag giveaway in the replay to see the exact email address. Once again, next week on the show, we have Karina and Brandon from Alexis Outdoors and Timbermates. It's going to be a great show. Make sure you tune in. And if you haven't already done so, please hit the subscribe button if you find value in the show, or if you'd like to check out future live streams. Also, if you want to follow more information on what's going on with Canoe Hounds Outdoor Adventure Show, like future shows and things like that, you can follow us on Facebook at Canoe Hounds Outdoor Adventure Show. And that's a page on there that you can get tuned into. So be sure to link up to that as well. So until next time, everybody, my name is Dennis, Canoe Hound Adventures. Have yourselves a great week. Get outside and keep the adventures alive. Cheers.